Hey, this is Billy from Perma Pastures Farm. Today we're going to talk about all of the failures we have around here. But before that, I want to be straight up with all of you folks out there and make it something of a confession. For some time now, in fact, I dare say for years and years, I've been a BLM supporter. And today marks the day I actually come out and make it very well known. In fact, I even have a shirt that says it all. Well, hopefully we didn't induce any heart attacks out there with that latest confession. But I do want to give a shout out to my man Ryan, aka General So, for the wonderful shirt idea. Wonderful, brilliant guy, and can't thank you enough. So anyway, now I've gotten the confession out of the way. Let's get down to brass tacks about all of the failures that go on around this place. We've gotten a ton of new subscribers as of late. And I might have given the impression, if you've seen just the videos, I might be like that Facebook friend of yours who only tells you the wonderful things that's going on in their lives, but they don't necessarily tell you the tragedies. The whole purpose of what we're doing here is fluid. And from time to time, I realize I do kind of put out there the spots where we fall short, but I don't think I put enough focus on them, because my biggest concern in doing these videos is that I create some phony picture of the reality of doing this kind of work, when the truth is, folks, you obviously go out there to try to have all the success you possibly can, but at the same time and invariably you're going to deal with a certain degree of failure. And I don't want anybody out there that might be coming across these videos to think, oh well shoot, I don't want to really give it a shot, man. I don't think I can do it that way, or I've done a little bit of it before and it didn't work out that way for me. Years ago when I'd gotten into this a while ago. And I remember, I think it was at the first Mother Earth News Fair, Joel Salatin was the keynote speaker. And it was right there in Lawrence, Kansas. I was out there in the crowd and I'm listening to his speech. And then he said something near the end of it that for me was life and paradigm changing. And I'm going to say it to you now in case you've never heard him say it. And I don't know that he came up with it, but for me it was one of the most transformative things that's ever been said to me, ever, by another human being on this planet. In fact, I can't think of another one that had a greater impact on me. And those words were, and I quote, "If it's worth doing, then it's worth doing poorly at first." It may not seem like, in fact, when I looked around, when he said it, there was like a eureka moment for me. Practically, beams from heaven were shining down like, the whole 9 yards. I knew at that moment that my life had changed the second I'd heard that, because from where I came from, I was kind of programmed, if you will, with the notion that, like everybody else, when you hear the beginning of that, everybody out there knows exactly how it ends. If it's worth doing, then it's worth doing right? I had been programmed with that thinking my whole life. And as a consequence of it, there's so many things early on in my early life that I didn't even give a shot at trying, because I thought I might fail at it. There was a fundamental fear of failure. But when Joel Salatin said those words, everything changed for me, because at that moment I now had license to try things that for me were undreamed of, things I never tried before. And so what it did for me was give me a sense of confidence. 180 degrees changed my whole outlook on how I did these things. So I went into this thing full steam ahead, no fear whatsoever, and thinking, okay, well, I can fail. And so I made a lot of mistakes, and I continue to make a lot of mistakes. And that's what I'm trying to convey today, folks. If you're one of those people that's on the fence and thinking, man, I don't think I can do that. This guy, he's butchering pigs and cows and chickens and everything else. I can't do that. Well, you know what, folks? I didn't start off that way, and maybe in time I can explain how we got there. But it was baby steps right off the bat. You don't learn to do these things overnight. You just start with a little bit, master it as best you can. You're going to have some setbacks, but use that as a catapult to push you further than where you were. That's what I want to get at today, folks. So without all that, without going into too much more detail on that, I want to give you up close and personal examples of the recent failures we have, because we have a fair share of them. I just don't think I've been good enough about telling you how many and what they are. So today I'm going to take that camera with me, and I'm going to show you up close and personal some failures that many people would think were absolutely colossal. But folks, they're only failures if you don't fix them or don't learn from them. I know a guy, and I'm sure everybody else out there does, I know a guy that's like Charlie Brown. No matter how many times you put down that football and he's told to kick it, he's going to get it snatched out from under him and he's going to land on his head. With that said, let's go ahead and take a look at all these recent failures. All right, it's a rainy day, and it's one of those days where it doesn't seem to stop. It's constant, either straight out raining or just enough to kind of, I don't know, make you miserable if you're not careful, if you don't keep a close watch on your mental well-being, so to speak. Okay, this is the first stop on all the failures we've had around here, and it's not a big one, but it potentially could be, and that has to do with the valve that's on this rainwater catchment tank that we put in. They just didn't have a whole lot of selection at that time. As you well know, things are kind of hard to find these days, but that valve, the one right there with the blue handle behind me, that one was initially one of those little hose bibs. Well, the problem is it's a 3/4 setup, but by the time it reduces down to the actual valve that's in it, I think it goes all the way down to 3/8. Well, the problem is you're going to have a pressure problem when you get further away from it. So, I gave a shout out before to my man from the Conrad Homestead who corrected me, which, by the way, folks, if you have a correction for anything I'm doing, by all means, tell me. Because even if I have to do it again, I would much rather take the time to do it right than wallow in foolish pride and keep doing things the wrong way. So anyway, not a big deal, right? Well, it's kind of a bigger deal when you got about 200 gallons of water in there to begin with after you did it wrong. So, hey, failure. But I can tell you what, when it's one of those failures that's annoying to the point where you're thinking, okay, I'll definitely remember this. I won't let that happen again. It's one you definitely do remember. So, that's first on the list. Move on. All right, let's talk about this chicken tractor on steroids. It took a while for me. I can't even tell you how many times I failed, because the first time I'd done it, we started out of the gates with one chicken tractor. Then there was a second. Then there was a third. And then the cool thing about it is, in time, I figured it out. At first I wasn't making the piles big enough. Didn't seem like I could get any answers back in those days. But I persevered and said, you know what? Failure is not an option. I'm going to figure out how to do this. Jeff Lawton did it. He gave some instructions there. I'm just going to do the best I can. And then over time, I figured, okay, tweak this, do that. And in time, it worked out. And then last time, now that's done typically with layers. But this last time out, we did it with meat birds. Now, right out of the gates. And I chronicled what those mistakes were. But I didn't give up. It was one of those things where you just keep at it and at it and at it, and then finally you get some things figured out. Maybe not all of it. This is the next recent failure, and this one pretty doggone recent. And it's not a massive failure, but it is a failure nonetheless. When you see a bunch of bare ground, it's typically a sign of not so good management, or even bad or horrible management. In this particular case, I called an audible at the end of working with the pigs. And what that audible happened to be was, you know what, instead of going ahead and butchering them at the time I wanted to go ahead and wait with the intention of getting maybe a little more fat out of the deal. And I've stated the reasons for the importance of that in previous videos. In this particular case, I left them here a little bit longer, and I was in a position where I could have moved them. It just would have been a nightmare. And it didn't seem worth it for the little bit of time that was left. So I left them here a little bit long, and they beat up the ground a little bit more than I should have let them. Now, is that a colossal mistake? No, not entirely, because I know exactly how to fix it. And in time, I'll show you guys how to do the same too. If you have an area that somebody else screwed up, left animals there too long, or maybe you did. Whatever the case may be, these are not errors that are not so bad that you can't possibly overcome. They are just foolish. This one in particular is a foolish error on my part, because had I just butchered them when they were supposed to be done, I would have, everything would have been just fine. This ground would be exactly the way it should be. But I let them stay here a little too long, and now it requires a little bit of remediation, but it's easy to fix. The beauty of permaculture. Okay, here's kind of a big deal, and this one's pretty recent too. Back in the spring, Michelle and I were capturing swarm after swarm after swarm after swarm. And so I was putting together these boxes with, I was losing sleep over it trying to put these things together. And because of inexperience and, just straight out ignorance, I was adding too much space to these boxes. So these smaller swarms that we were capturing, should have left them in a smaller box. But instead I added another brood box on top of it and a super. And it was a foolish mistake, because it's like this. Imagine you have two people and it's your job to protect, let's say, an efficiency apartment. Okay, you could probably do that pretty effectively. But now all of a sudden, you have those same two people and you're supposed to protect an apartment building. Okay, ain't that hard for invaders to get in there when you got it set up like that. So this was really a tough one for me, because I was so jazzed up about, we came from Texas with 4 hives. Then we split a couple, and then now we got 6. And then we captured a bunch more. We were up to 11. And because of it, some moths got in there, and boy, did they wreak havoc on it. So now I'm in the position right now where I got to bust out all the frames out of there. And it's a mountain of work. It's a lot of work. All because of inexperience, not the unwillingness to learn. I just didn't know any better. It was just sheer ignorance. And those failures where you lose animals, or even insects in this case, those are the ones that are most impactful. Because early on in this journey, I remember when we first started with chickens, our yellow lab, our old, mature yellow lab up there, she was just a puppy then, and she wiped out about 12 chickens right off the bat because of my own ignorance. I'm like, oh man, she's out there strangling these poor things. She had already killed 10 of them before I even realized what was going on. Like I said, don't get discouraged or think that you can't do it. You're going to have some setbacks. You're going to have some failures. That's just part of it. Now let's move on to the next. Okay, the failure I'm going to demonstrate right now has to do with that steak you see right there behind me, that wooden steak. It has what's called bone sauce on it. And once again, folks, the instructions on how to make that stuff, we had deer up here wiping these things out. And I was thinking, my goodness. Don't have time to put up a fence. Don't have a livestock guardian dog, which in the past has always worked well for us. So I was looking for some serious solutions. I remember hearing about bone sauce from Sepp Holzer. But folks, if you go out there and look for it, there's about 20 different ways in which to make this stuff. Many of them contradict one another. Folks, I'm not kidding. That video to make took somewhere in the neighborhood. It had to, I don't remember exactly now, but it had to take somewhere in the neighborhood of about a month, because I kept messing it up. I knew the consistency wasn't right. I kept screwing it up. I don't even know how many times I made fires to get that thing right. But I guess I'm just stubborn and hard-headed enough to say, look, hey, I'm committed at this point, man. I'm going to figure this out. And thank God I did, because in the end, the deer have basically, they're leaving this place alone. It works effectively. So folks, go back and check that video out if you need to. But the point I'm trying to make is this was a colossal failure over and over and over and over again. I can't even count the number of times. In fact, I screwed up the filming of it because I just got so sick of trying to go through the steps and doing this thing. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll get it right and then I'll refilm it in the future, which is exactly what I'm gonna have to do because I messed it up so badly. Next failure. Right there in the background, folks, what you're looking at is a sheep tractor that Michelle welded together, fabricated. We put it all together, and it is the cat's meow, if I do say so myself. She did an exceptional job at putting that thing together, but the screw up in that is my fault. Because from the very beginning, William was thinking, you know what, we need to put casters on all 4 wheels. I didn't think that was such a swell idea. So we stuck them on one end. And then no sooner than we got it out here, you know what, I realized quick, fast, and in a hurry, man, this is an awful idea because I need this thing to articulate. And so doing it in the field, it's one thing to sit here and do this thing in the garage, but when you got to come out in the field and make those kinds of repairs, it's not fun, it's not easy, it's not simple, and you have egg on your face in front of your own son because you thought you knew better when he actually had a better solution for it. So another lesson learned. Another thing was the sail on top. We tried some other things. It's just constant tinkering to figure out just what works right. And folks, before this thing, and I think we demonstrated that in the video, we literally had these guys in a 5x10 dog kennel that we would physically pick up and move from paddock to paddock to paddock. If you think that's not a nightmare, especially in this landscape, you're welcome to come out and give it a shot. I could go on and on. I mean, I'm giving you the short list of failures here. I don't want to give anybody the impetus to think, you know what? Okay, I subscribed to this guy's channel, but he's a complete failure. I think I'm going to unsubscribe. So folks, there's other things that I'm not pointing out too in terms of human relationships. There are times when I'm out and about and I'm doing things and I get harassed about this or that. You might have seen some of those videos. Look, folks, simply put, I got a healthy dislike for nonsense and stupidity. Most importantly, inefficiency, especially when it comes to work, and I can be impatient sometimes. Generally, I am a very happy person because I spend every day doing what it is I think the good Lord put me here to do. But I have those failures where, and all of us do, where you don't react the way you wished with your wife or your husband or your kids or whatever. And then you got to, to some extent prostrate yourself and ask for forgiveness when you screw up and you step out of order or say things you shouldn't, especially in these times where everybody feels like they're under a bit of tension. So those are personal failures as well. But folks, the bigger theme to this whole video that I really hope that I'm pointing out is that I hope you don't get the impression through watching these videos that I got all the answers, because I don't. And even the people I look up to, the heroes out there that I've been the beneficiary of so much of their knowledge, they would probably tell you too, they don't have all the answers. But I'm a quick study and I'm willing to learn. So I hope some of this stuff was helpful, folks. I really do. So until next time, this is Billy, the Permaculture Pimp Daddy, where PIMP stands for Permaculture is my passion. Even on rainy days, folks, because it really is. We'll see you next time.